Welcome to the Flat Track Factory. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm just back from the racetrack in Virginia. It is a new facility to us, so I'll tell you about the facility, the racing surface, then I'll sit down, open a beer so I can properly give you the race report. Then I'll talk about how I use the adjustable rev limiter and gearing changes to tune for a new track length and a new surface. And if you're really bored, at the end I may tell you about changing the starter motor in a box fan. Stick around. This weekend we raced at a new facility. Well, not a new facility, but a new facility to motorcycle racing in Woodstock, Virginia. It was an all-star series race at the Shenandoah County Fairgrounds at the county fair. The facility is a true measured half mile around the very bottom of the track. I use my standard Google Earth procedure where I use a satellite image and their measurement feature and came up with 2660. That's about the standard 6 feet above the physical inside limit of the surface. So the true half mile on the bottom would make sense. For reference, that's about 300 feet longer than a similar measuring technique for the proper Oglethorpe Raceway in Savannah before they improved it. The surface itself is what the locals call, or told me they call, blue crushed limestone. It looks black, very sharp, about 1 to 3 millimeter pieces. And the groundskeeping crew said I could bring some back to show you, so I'll put it here and show you what that looks like. On satellite images, the track looks symmetrical, but the groundskeeping crew tells me that the back straightaway is quite a bit narrower than the front, and you definitely can tell that riding on the track when it seems like you run out of racetrack at the exit of 2. For a horse racing facility, they race the horses that pull the, I'm sorry I'm going to foul this up, but the horses trot and they pull a cart, and I don't remember the right word for it, but the track is actually banked substantially. I've never seen a horse facility banked like this. The dirt looks black. Well, it's not dirt, it's rocks. It is very, very dark in color. It actually looks like coal or fresh ground asphalt. It's quite loose and fluffy in the corners and very deep and relatively shallow on the straightaways. I didn't quite know what to expect, so as you can see, I used some of my carbon fiber bits and cobbled together some guards in attempt to preserve the paint and finish on the frame. And I haven't cleaned it up yet. I wanted to show you what it looked like after we raced. So there it is. The blast was notable. It felt like being hit with a fire hose. It's quite an experience. An interesting thing about the surface, with it being so black, the ruts as they would develop and the track would change substantially every single lap. The ruts that would develop as the bikes went through and obviously dug out a trench from where their tires ran, the shadows, particularly at night, were black obviously, and the surface is black, and it's rather difficult to tell the difference. It is a big track and speeds are quite high. It's a hell of a sensation, but it was interesting to adapt to the visibility issue. Of course, stack on some tear-offs. You're going to be pulling them, unless you get a hole shot. The track prep crew has quite a bit of heavy equipment, large tractors with various combs and packers that they can quickly repair the surface in a matter of, 5 to 10 minutes. it can be brought back from heavily rutted to very smooth. But because the rock bits are so large that even packed down, they never truly pack, and it's quite fluffy in the corners, and obviously a bunch of high-powered motorcycles rutted up. So it's really only smooth for one pass of that particular part of the racetrack, and then it gets quite rough. So I noticed very large speed differentials between the beginning of your race. Even if you go out on a smooth track, by the time you were done with your race, the surface was completely different. The grounds crew clearly has prepped this track before, and they're quite good at it. So if you race there in the future, it's just kind of up to the promoter and the schedule and number of entries, I suppose, as to how often they choose to go out and refresh the surface. I got the crew chief here to verify that my story is in fact totally correct, and I think this story is going to go well with Tecate. Your factory tip for this video is this is the only beer that's better in a can. Should go with a lime, but I don't have one right now. Yeah. All right, the race report. Start with practice. Excuse me. Based on the track length being longer than Oglethorpe and figuring in for some wheel spin, I went 2 teeth higher than my tallest gearing at Savannah, geared for 5th gear. I went out in the first practice session. We were the first people on track, so the track was smooth, and I think speeds were high. Of course, I haven't ridden on a track like this in a lifetime, so really didn't know what to expect. But it was pretty clear to me that the gearing was way off, like bogging in the middle of the corners, stumbling off. So I actually downshifted to 4th. On my setup, that's a 8 teeth difference downshifting. So that was too short. I was running into an 8500 soft limiter at that point. So boring story. So I changed gearing for the second session. I decided to go down to 4th gear and then add a tooth and then raise the limiter slightly to 8650, and that seemed to work out pretty well. Depending on when I would go out, if the track was freshly prepped, it'd be much faster. I would be into the limiter about 3/4 of the way down the straightaway, and if the track was rough, I would not get into the limiter at all, and that seemed to work well. Had good acceleration. I didn't have any trouble out accelerating anybody, so that was good. Good stuff. I entered 2 classes that I was eligible for, super singles and 40 plus. I know it's hard to believe that I'm legal in 40 plus. I actually had to bring a birth certificate to prove that, because the girls that sign up just didn't believe it, but I am. And I hate to admit this, but it became evident to me that I was really uncomfortable on this surface. The way I can tell that is my grips will get spun on the bars when I'm uncomfortable because I'm squeezing. I got a death grip. So when I came back in and saw the grips twisted and felt arm pump, I knew it was going to be a long night. The track changes so substantially after just one race is on the track that it can go from just physically demanding to extremely demanding. And I decided that whatever heat race lined up closest to track prep, that was going to be the class that I ran for the evening, and I was going to ditch the other main event so I could be a little fresher. I just didn't feel like I had 2 main events in me, being just not used to the surface. So that ended up being the 40 plus race, which I'm kind of glad, because I got to race with my buddy Mike O'Neill for the first time ever. Well, maybe the second time. Lisa reminded us that we had raced the Indian Arrows together one time. So that went well. I was able to get a good start in my heat and win that, and I sat on the pole for the main event. Came off the line in the main not too well, but was able to battle with another gentleman on a nice Rotax and Mike O'Neill on his beautiful Yamaha, and we mixed it up a little bit, and then I was able to get out front, and in short order I got tired and went into survival mode just because of the roughness of the track and not being able to see the difference between the black dirt and the black shadows of the ruts in the dirt. So went into conservation mode, kind of riding in the middle, and then I saw somebody out of the corner of my eye pestering me on the inside. So I waited to see what he had, and he progressively was gaining on me. So I moved to the top of the track, which was untouched. There was a couple 6-8 feet wide section between the bales and the ruts. So I went up there for about 4 laps, and it was much faster. I was able to pull a little bit of gap. Then it started getting rough, and just me running the track, from what I could tell, I could see it increasingly adding 1 line every lap. So I'm pretty sure it was just me. About 4 laps into running the very, very top of the track, the bike started to buck, and I started thinking about the hay bales. So I decided to dive to the bottom and cork the guy up on the Rotax who had been working me on the bottom. As far as I can tell, he was running the bottom the whole time, so he had no track knowledge of any other thing than the bottom. So I stuffed up his line, pull putted around the bottom, and made sure I got a real good drive down the straightaway, watching the shadows to make sure that he was nowhere to be seen on the straightaways, and he wasn't. So about 3 or 4 laps of stuffing him up on the bottom. I don't know if he went anywhere else, but I never saw him again, and I was able to win that race. And let me tell you, the grandstands had people in it that were thrilled to be there. The vibe at the track was fantastic. They actually wanted to hear the interviews. People typically get up and go to the restroom or get a beverage or a snack, but these people that were listening and cheering, and just the greatest bunch of fans that I've been around in a long time, and it was very fun. A great environment to race in, and they came down after the races and wanted to sit on the bike and get a poster and tell stories about their race bikes and what kind of racing they want to do, and it was just a great vibe. So that's my race report. If you'd like to see a couple of laps on board, I took a GoPro video of a front-facing cam from the rear tail section during practice. I posted that last night, so if you go down below and click on the Flat Track Factory channel name, you'll be directed to the channel page, and you can see that if you're interested. I had a question on that video. Was there any grip? What was the grip like on that surface? And it has grip, but it's just, if you haven't ridden in a deep cushion like this, it's hard to describe. It's sort of grippy, sort of slippery, but it's not like a hard-packed clay surface that could be slippery or sticky. It's a little bit like water skiing a couple miles an hour too slow, or snow skiing in heavy spring snow, where you're not really on the track, you're in the track. And of course, the track changes so substantially every lap. It is fairly risky to stuff it in there at 10/10ths, because that may have been okay last lap, but even if nobody else has been on the track on your line, you just were. So if you're exactly in the same spot as you were last lap, there's now a rut 3 or 4 inches deep that there wasn't there 1 lap ago. So yes, there's grip. It's a different kind of thing. It's quite unique. So for my Rotax guys that have or are considering getting the fully electronic ignition with the programmable rev limiter, let me tell you how I use that on at a new track on a surface like this. What I decided to do was set my rev limiter conservative. For me, that's 8500, soft limiter, and then absolute limiter was 9050. I told you about the gearing situation earlier, but what the general theory that I do is I know where I begin my rev limiter, and on the bigger tracks you inch up to it, so you can really tell when you're getting close because it starts skipping every third ignition pulse. So that's an easy way to know exactly where you are. Then of course you can gauge how much farther you need to go to accelerate. So you can kind of play with that a little bit. And way too long of a description to get into the particulars of how to do that. But basically what I did was, once I knew that the bike wasn't revving up really fast and aggressively getting into the limiter so it would blow past the soft limiter into the hard limiter, the bike just stops then, and that doesn't feel good. So I knew I could safely raise the limiter, so I added 150 revs and then dropped a tooth. So not only would the bike rev a little bit less, but I had a little bit more cushion into the soft limiter. So you can play with that a little bit. You'll need to understand your piston weight. If you have a reputable, knowledgeable Rotax engine builder that knows your piston weight, they can tell you really what it should rev to. If you've got a 600 Rotax, there's really not that much difference power-wise between all the various combinations in the 600 range. Really, in the 8,000 rev range is considered acceptable. You'll have people, of course, that have different opinions on that, but that's what I stick to. And even sticking with that every single year, my crank has a slight amount of run out, because it's just, it's a delicate crank compared to what we're doing with it. So that's how to tune with both rev limiter to know exactly how far you're revving, and rear tooth count to adjust where you're going to hit that limiter. All right, so that's the race report. Kind of long-winded, so I hope you got something from that. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about anything in particular with the track or gearing or how to tune for track length and track surface, post something down in the comments. If you like this type of content, go ahead and subscribe. Maybe hit the notification bell. That way you'll know when I post up a new video. Have any ideas for videos or things that you'd like me to maybe cover in the future? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.